Writing a book is not just about telling your life story. Writing a book can be a catalyst for other people to transform their lives. You have to have a burning sense of purpose. And that is why I have invited our guest today, Petra, who is the author of Living on Purpose. We're going to be chatting a little bit about this book and also what it means to have a life on purpose. Petra, thank you so much for joining us on the Write, Learn and Earn show. You have got this career that is quite difficult to pick all the different things that you've done. You're an actress, you're a philanthropist, you are a coach, you are an author. Who is the real Petra?
Sure. So I love, that you pointed out the diverse journey that I've had, which is fantastic because I was always made wrong for it, right? You always have to focus on one thing. And Petra, you're up to too many things. And what are you up to now? And the great thing is that all of it's become part of who I am. It's multifaceted like we all are. So in a nutshell, I am a tree-hugging hippie that just wants to cheer everyone on, support you and inspire you to live on purpose, live intentionally, so that you can create a life that you love, and by doing so, impact the lives of others as well, whether it's humans, animals, or the planet.
I love that. There are a couple of pearls inside this book. So just for the audience, I don't want to give everything away, but there are a whole bunch of interviews that you've done with people who have said that there's been some kind of challenge, and a massive challenge that they've had to overcome, and it's linked to their purpose. Now, I like that because I do find that in my book coaching work, I have a lot of people say, oh, this thing happened, and then that happened. And I hear about all of these traumas, and there are reasons why people cannot progress, why they cannot take action in the area of their dreams. But you've got a different slant to it. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. It's those examples where two kids are raised in the same household with a dad that is an alcoholic, and the one becomes an alcoholic and the other one doesn't and becomes very successful. So it's similar to that in it's not necessarily what happened to us, but how we choose to move forward through it, how we choose to recreate our lives when we've gone through something traumatic. And the whole point of interviewing such incredible visionaries, and they're across all sectors, and was about chatting with them about how, when they connected with their purpose, their reason, how their lives changed. And by doing so, they could start living more intentionally. So there are some rags to riches stories, and there are some where, people grew up with a lot of privilege as well. So I wanted to make sure that I shared both of those, or all sides rather. But for me, I was on an inspired high for the entire year that I was interviewing everyone, because it was exactly that. It's getting nuggets and insights on a look into how they are thinking and how they've created these visionary brands of impact. So really, really exciting. There's about 40 stories of truly incredible humans that, and I'm using air quotes, that were previously ordinary folk, but by choosing to create lives of impact, by living intentionally, by aligning with their vision, their values, and their why, they have been able to just outcreate the trajectory of what their lives could have been.
I love that. And what I also noticed in the book, now you've got a bit of a fashion background and you also work as a stylist, and how that links to purpose. The one thing that was in the book that stood out for me was that when people see you, they cannot see your expertise. They can only see what they see in front of them. So tell us a little bit about how you work with people managing it, because it's not just about the clothes, it's about the message that you are portraying before they get a chance to know you.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, because, we always say we're not superficial. We don't judge books by their covers, which is a complete lie, because inherently that's how we're wired. We're wired to survive. So we have a natural negativity bias that when I see you, I make an instant judgment call if you're going to harm me or contribute to my life. And sure, this is, you're not necessarily going to harm me, but it's part of how our brain is wired to make a quick judgment call based on what we can see. And 55% of a first impression is based on our physical appearance, which, yes, includes the way we stand, the way we hold ourselves, and the way we look. So my work transitioned from being a fashion designer to a stylist to an image and personal brand specialist, which is where I have fun and I play with. And it's really about helping you connect with who you are internally and how we can showcase who you are truly, your authenticity, what you stand for, what you believe in, your skills and your competencies on the outside, so externally. So really communicating your internal worth in an external way. Because if you can show up differently, if you can show up with confidence and you can show up authentically, not as a copy-paste version of what's out in the magazines or the fashion trends of the day, if you can show up personally, it tells me in an instant who you are, so that I will now communicate with the way that you are presenting yourself to me. So that's also the great thing that we forget about, is the way that I show up is how you're going to respond to me, which then sets off the dynamic of our conversation, of our relationship. You know, we always say you can't make a first impression more than once. Once it's done, it's done. And yes, we can over time, but it takes up to about 7 first impressions or new interactions to convince the other person that actually that wasn't me, that was a bad first impression, this is actually who I am. And we don't always have the luxury of meeting with someone up to 7 times so I can change your mind. So as much as possible, it's being aligned with who I am internally and then showcasing that externally, so you know who I am, what I stand for, what I believe in.
It's an interesting thing. I have this little story about when I arrived in Johannesburg, and I had a friend that I'd grown up with. He lived in almost the same street as me. It took me 5 minutes to walk from my house to his house, and we got along very, very well. And when I arrived in Johannesburg, after he'd been living here for quite some time, he invited me out to go for coffee. We both were from the Eastern Cape, and so, you know, Eastern Cape people dress a lot more casually than people in Johannesburg. But I arrived at the coffee shop and I had dressed nicely because I knew the place we were going to, and everyone there dressed very smartly. And he arrived in his shorts, slip-slops, and a rather tattered looking anorak. And immediately I felt disrespected because I had put in the time to dress nicely. And here was a person that thought, well, you just got to go with my personality. So it looked out of place. It made me feel uncomfortable and I felt disrespected. And from that point on, I stopped going out anywhere with him. If he invited me to his house for a coffee, I was there. But if we had to go out in public, I did not want to be with him. Now, for some people, it might sound superficial, but you cover that when you deal with leaders. In the book, you've mentioned that sometimes a leader expects certain things from their staff, but they don't follow suit. How does that play out in the corporate world?
Absolutely. So I get pulled in to do a lot of makeovers, image makeovers, personal brand makeovers for Exco, because it's exactly that, where sometimes they're in a high management or senior position and they're about to be promoted, but how they look, they're not showing up professionally. They're not showing up aligned with the brand or the vision of the organization. So I get pulled in to do a complete overhaul, and I never do just the clothing because I want to know who they are, so that we are creating a personal brand that is authentic for them, that they're comfortable in. Or else I could just send them to the store and say, look, here's your suit or here's your dress or whatever. But it's exactly that they set the standard. And things have changed a lot over the last couple of years because of what we've been through. So people are dressing down a lot more. So there's the great side in where people are feeling more comfortable in who they are and more comfortable in their skins to just show up. But also what this does psychologically, again, is if I am looking to you as my leader, and again, it's that first impression and it's the recurring impression that I get all the time. And you aren't showing up fully, and by fully I mean traditionally in a corporate sense of what corporate professionalism looks like. And this is global. It's a global phenomenon, so it's not something we're going to change overnight or even in the next few years. But when I see you, I expect to see you in a certain light. So keeping in mind that professionalism looks different depending on the industry. So we can go from banking to branding to marketing to ad agencies. So it's not like one level of professionalism looks the same. So we've got to make sense in the industry that we're in. But if I can show up fully, so I've made an effort, I've put in an effort to say your time is important, my clients are important, the work we're doing here is important, and I'm going to show up as such. It changes my psychology when I get dressed up, because I'm intentionally telling my brain, okay, this is important enough to get dressed up for and make an effort. And I'm telling you the same, which is exactly what you experienced. And it's very subtle, more often than not subconscious, that you had that conscious awareness was great. But oftentimes it's a subconscious where we don't know why, but there's a level of lack of respect or lack of wanting to align with what you're saying, because what you're saying and what you're doing or looking like, there's a cognitive dissonance there. So that's also the thing. If you're expecting professionalism from me and attention to detail from me, I expect the same from you.
So on that point, obviously most of our audience are authors, or they are aspiring authors. As authors, we tend to get ourselves tucked into a hole. We write a lot. We sometimes commit these little sins. We're not looking after our posture, so we tend to slouch. I do that.
I'm concentrating right now.
I find myself going more and more forward because I'm used to looking at the keyboard, looking at the phone. And so that affects our posture and the way that we show up. When we get invited to speak about our books, sometimes there is the temptation to bring that little hermit author to the interview. Do you have a couple of tips for us to say, when you're pitching up, how do you pitch up in a way that you respect the audience, but you're still authentic?
Yes. Such a great question. Thank you for asking that. I think it's always dress up a level more than you think is required. So I'm, like I mentioned, tree-hugging hippie. Naturally, my style is completely bohemian. But with the work I do, if I show up for interviews or for my clients dressed in my boho outfit, I lose credibility instantly. So it's about, what do you require me to show up with? Because I need you to connect with my message. And you're not going to do that if I show up and I've put a wall up by separating us, by saying you and I look very different. Therefore, you and I probably have very different values. So always dress up a level, but also get advice. Get support from a professional. You know, we have coaches for our writing. So why don't we have coaches for the way that we are showing up in this world? So it's not a wrongness saying that, okay, I require a coach for this now. I require someone that's an expert in this field to show me, because we can't always see what we can't see, what we don't know. How we've grown up and we've started dressing a certain way, maybe because our family modeled it, or at some point 20 years ago we thought that this celebrity dressed well, and somehow we've stuck to that because someone gave us a compliment on the way we looked 20 years ago, and now that's how we're showing up. And we forget that we've evolved as humans. So it's keeping that in mind as well, is where am I now? And how, again, I've mentioned it a few times, but how do I want to show up now for the man or woman that I want to become or am seen as? How do I want to be represented? So if we look at, let's say, Mel Robbins or Richard Branson, that dress down a lot, or Brené Brown, that is aligned with who they are. So no one's going to question their professionalism based on the fact that they're wearing jeans and sneakers, maybe. Or dressed down more casually. But even if they're dressed down more casually, everything fits them exceptionally well. So that's also a difference, is making sure that whatever you're wearing fits you beautifully, that it fits your body type, versus buying something off the hanger. And because, I'm a little person, so I have to tailor everything. If I sat here buying things off the racks, everything would be oversized or too long. So for me to appear refined, it's that extra attention to detail again. So if that's one thing, is making sure that your outfits are contemporary, updated. Doesn't mean fashion trends at all, but that fit your personality and the person that you're stepping into as well.
I like that. And sometimes we commit these little sins that we just simply are not aware of. So I know a speaker who I have enormous respect for. But as an artist, I know that our eyes go towards the lightest thing. And so we chatted about this, the fact that she'll sometimes wear a skirt without stockings. And it's a modern world. I mean, who wants to wear stockings? Some people think it's an old fuddy-duddy kind of thing. But immediately what happens is, if you're looking at her in a totality, you see the legs, because her legs are very white. And her expertise is not in her legs, her expertise is here. So sometimes you need to have that person that says, this is the way that it looks to the outside world. Are you aware of that? It's a difficult call, because sometimes you're like, I don't want to make the person feel bad. But I know that Barry Mitchell, who's from the Uncovering Greatness team, he always says to us, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. And being nice would say, I don't want to make you feel bad. But being kind is saying, this thing is an obstacle for you in terms of your professionalism, how you pitching up. And because I'm a kind person, I'm going to address that with you, which really helped me to be able to tell people things the way they are.
It's letting you sit here with a piece of food in your mouth or on your teeth versus saying, Kim, just take that out. Kindness versus niceness.
Yes.
And obviously in the way we do it. I had, interesting when you mentioned that, so my book cover, this book cover, initially looked completely different. So when I was writing the book, I went through a very traumatic experience with a break-in and some armed men and fight for my life, managed to survive it with my ex-partner at the time. And so writing the book for me became almost life and death, saying anything could happen. Are you living a life that inspires you? So it became really important and a serious topic for me, even though it's living on purpose, which is an inspirational title, right? So my first book cover was very heavy. I was wearing black. My facial expression was more serious, because for me, this was serious business now. It's like, guys, come now, like, make the changes that are required in your life so you can live fully and live a life that you love and create a business that you love. And I got the first book cover. I thought it looked great, done professionally, shared it with a few people to get feedback. I'm a very give me feedback. That's how I operate in this world. And I gave them the sample manuscript of the book as well. And when they read it, every single comment was, P, it doesn't align, it doesn't make sense. The content is very inspirational, but your book cover almost alienates me, because it looks like you're about to yell at me, or it's very serious. So again, there's that dissonance where it's not making sense. So I redid the photo shoot and the book cover so it would align with the content. So that's a metaphor, of course, for how we're showing up in life. And also exactly what you're saying is what we think sometimes isn't actually what's being communicated. So that's where getting advice and from a professional or someone, it's not necessarily someone you care about, because sometimes we just want to let you know that you're okay the way you are. Don't change. You don't need to change. If people don't respect you, that's their problem, right? So it's rather going to someone that you respect, maybe a peer or someone that's in the business world, and asking them for feedback. So that's how I would approach that side.
I like it. You've given us some really great pearls of wisdom. You do corporate workshops as well. Just tell us a little bit about your workspace, who you're targeting, if people wanted to get hold of you, what kind of options are there?
Thank you. So in the personal development space and the well-being space and social impact, so there's the three pillars. So whether it's workshops or masterclasses, one-on-one coaching or team coaching, and empowerment programs. So really around personal development is helping you connect with, discover and align or realign your purpose, your values and your vision, and your legacy of impact that you desire to create. So we look at your personal space and how you align it with your business or the team or the greater organization. So that's really a great one, because so many people focus on their skills. So this is what I'm good at. And for the next 20 years, that is my trajectory, is focusing on my skill and elevating my skill. So where I get pulled in as well with a lot of the exco is when they aren't thriving in their role anymore, when they aren't supporting their teams are feeling criticized and not inspired and led, but rather managed. And every single interaction that I've had, our first discovery coaching call session, Kim, every single exec, when I ask them, when we go through the purpose, vision and values piece, everyone looks at me and says, I've never been asked that before. They can tell me what the vision and the values are for the business and their role in the business, but for themselves, their personal vision, values, purpose, they haven't got a clue. And that's really interesting, and it's hard work for them because it's undoing patterns that they've solidified their whole career. So that's really deep, great, expansive work, because as soon as they can step into the lightness and the possibilities of their life, everything changes in work, and everything changes how they lead their teams. So I've had some great opportunities to work with a lot of the Exco team, but then there's also the support staff and the employees that also aren't aligning and engaged. They aren't enthusiastic about their work anymore. They're not passionate. They're not creating more. They're just ticking off their roles and responsibilities, which is hardly how we want to show up in life, right? We spend most of our time at work or in our businesses. So it's really helping you unlock your possibilities so you can create and live with more ease and joy and possibilities in your life. So that's a lot of the personal development space. And then the well-being space is teaching you tools and techniques to operate from a space of ease again and possibilities versus problem solving, which sounds same, but very different. And those techniques for stress prevention, burnout prevention, helping you overcome or manage your overwhelm, anxiety, ADHD, lack of focus, being in a space that isn't creating more for you. And space sometimes is your personal space, and it's got nothing to do with your surroundings, even though we project it onto everyone else or everything else. So that's a lot of the well-being space. And then the social impact is, how do we make a difference as individuals and as an organization? So it's a creativity workshop looking for opportunities and possibilities to make a difference in simple ways and sustainable legacy ways for, again, humans, animals, or the planet. And that's tied in with my foundation, my charity.
I love the work that you do, and it just highlights something that you mentioned in the book about how sometimes we are living day to day, just repeating it, and then we call it life.
Yes.
And that's not really it. That's just us being stuck in the same old patterns. Petra, if someone wanted to get hold of you via LinkedIn or website, can you just tell us how that would happen?
Thank you, Kim. So it's my name and surname across all platforms. So petralaranjo.com, and on every social media platform as well, Petra Laranjo. So nice and easy. Just check the spelling, which I'm sure you'll have in the show notes anyway. And we'd love to engage, whether it's an email or a DM. Might take a while to get there, to the DMs, especially on social, but I'll get there eventually. So thank you, Kim.
Excellent.
Grateful.
So everyone, that's it. It's another wrap for our show. I loved having Petra on the show because I'm all about legacy, and writing a book is one tool to actually help you have ripple effects to the outside world. So grab hold of this book. It's available on Amazon. You can also get it from Petra directly. And please subscribe and check out our next guest. So you have a wonderful day. Petra, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Kim. Appreciate it.